One of the best Swiss watchmakers that are at that entry door of the luxury segment is Longines. Although much of the conversation surrounding the brand typically stems from their heritage pieces, today we're going to look at a more modern, contemporary watch with some mass appealing looks with the 39mm Longines Conquest, a watch that could very well be the best do-it-all watch for around $1,000. Let's jump into it. So as many of you know, TeddyBaldassarre.com is now an authorized dealer for Longines, which I am incredibly thrilled about. I absolutely love this brand. In terms of what's available, we have over 40 curated different models across a variety of different collections. But to start ourselves off here in this video, I wanted to look at a watch that I think is incredibly underappreciated for what it's representing from an everyday perspective, and that is the contemporary Conquest 39mm. Now to start us off here, let's begin looking at a brief history of Longines as well as some background on this model family. Now Longines as a brand dates back to the year 1832, making it one of the older and more storied houses in the international watch industry. In a modern context, Longines has existed under the Swatch Group umbrella since 1983 alongside other iconic brands which are currently under the umbrella like Omega, Hamilton, Tissot, just to name a few. Now Longines is a major player when it comes to volume as well, responsible for up to 2 million watches per year and is one of a few watch brands in the Swiss watch market with over $1 billion per year in revenue. To assist in that wide-ranging reach this brand has, their collection is impressively broad, offering a wide variety of model families and variations to suit virtually anyone from the most casual watch wearer all the way up to the snobbiest enthusiast, all while typically offering a compelling value proposition for the level of luxury finishing on display. In terms of the background on this particular model, the name Conquest for Longines dates back to 1954. At just over 35mm in diameter and available in either steel or gold variants, the mid-century Conquest was, at least visually, 100% a dress watch, with applied faceted indices, a pipe hand style dial, and Dauphine hands at the center. However, it's interesting to note that the original Conquest retained at least some adventurous capabilities thanks to a screw-down caseback and gasket crown system that in hindsight foreshadowed this current Conquest's much sportier position within their lineup. Having been much of the same in terms of its general design for the last couple of decades, the contemporary take on the Conquest is defined by a sporty case available in a number of different sizes as well as a variety of refined dial variations, all balancing a more dressier execution with impressively capable levels of water resistance of 300 meters. For the purpose of this video, we'll be taking a look at my top picks when it comes to the size and style with both the black and sunburst blue 39mm variants. Starting with the conversation on the wearing experience and case of this Conquest, we have a 39mm wide case diameter paired with a reasonable 48mm lug to lug that, coupled with the prominent old school crown guards, make this watch just a bit larger, closer to a 40mm in my opinion. Considering the 300 meters of water resistance, you might expect a heftier build in terms of the thickness, but the Conquest measures around 11.5mm from the top of the flat sapphire crystal to the bottom of the dome screw down caseback. I can't help but wonder how slim this watch could have been with a more traditional water resistance rating, but this package should work well on all but the largest or the smallest wrist out there. In terms of finishing, the Conquest is conventional yet well done, with vertical brushing across the tops of the lugs and high polishing on the vertical case flanks, the prominent sloping bezel, and on the angular crown guards that straddle a signed screw-down crown with ridges at its base with a recessed capped end that is easy to grip. The crown shape is perhaps too good though, as it's a tad sharp when screwing and unscrewing, but easy to snag nevertheless, and the novel shape adds visual interest in differentiating from the competition. The caseback features the winged hourglass motif as well as the EFCO, a reference to Ernest Francilian, who was leading the brand in the mid-1800s. Set between 19mm lugs, this Conquest is equipped with a solid 3-link bracelet that integrates into the sculpted lug design without adding anything to its stature. With high polishing on the center of all of the links and vertical brushing on the outer portions, this bracelet complements the rest of the case in its finish style, maintaining a constant width from the lugs to the sign hidden butterfly style clasp, which works well but lacks much in the way of micro adjustment, meaning precise fit might be a little bit more difficult to dial in. The bracelet though is a noticeable upgrade compared to some of the offerings from everyday options from the likes of Tissot, being a strong indicator of the quality jump in terms of the case. Again, focusing on the watch's anterior surface, we take up view of the striking primary dial surface lying beneath the flat sapphire crystal, which offers unobstructed view thanks to several layers of anti-reflective coating on the underside that works well in practice. The most distinguishing characteristic of the Conquest dial is the use of oversized Arabic numerals located at the 12 and 6 o'clock, paired with rectangular indices, each with smaller rectangular cutouts. Approaching the dial's periphery, a simple chapter ring is complete with linear markings that allow for solid legibility when paired with the faceted polished handset. At this point though, it's important to call out a couple of peculiar differences between the blue and black dial Conquest references. On the blue dial variant, the indices are applied and polished, but both the dial and hands are absent of any luminescent material, while the indices on the black dial are in fact lumed, but are simply printed in a silver color as opposed to applied. The use of applied markers on the blue dial variant, coupled with the lack of lume, leads me to see that reference as the dressier option of the two, with the black feeling more sporty given its subtle but impactful differences. The decision to include applied markings on one dial and not the other is a bit strange, as it creates a point of differentiation that could have one not looking in the direction of a specific colorway depending on their intended purpose. Now, I'm someone who doesn't really put heavy weight on lume compared to others that push their watches to their limits, but the decision to include it on one dial variant and not the other is rather peculiar. That note aside, there is a lot to like with this dial design, and the finishing on the sunburst surface is especially eye-catching, only interrupted by a printed Longines word mark and another appearance of the winged hourglass at 12, a simply outlined date window at the 3, an automatic, and a 30-bar 300 meters at the 6. Looking at this dial concept as a whole, we have an intriguing dressier design with a tiny bit of an explorer feel with some of those larger Arabics, and some elevated finishing that make it really good for the price range, prioritizing legibility and everyday utility. Beyond the case, bracelet, and dial, which are all excellent at this price range for around $1,200, we have what is perhaps the single most significant value proposition with this piece, and that is going to be the caliber on the flip side, the Longines L888. One of the many benefits of being included among the Swatch Group's powerful assembly of brands is the heightened level of access to and collaboration with ETA, the Swiss powerhouse when it comes to third-party movement manufacturing. In recent years, Longines has utilized a series of calibers designed and produced by ETA, but specifically supplied only for Longines. So while this range of movements, including this one inside this Conquest, can't technically be called in-house, they do offer an elevated value as well as better spec compared to something like the ETA 2824-2 that you might otherwise expect from a watch in this price range. So this specific movement here is essentially the ETA A31, which is itself a modified ETA 2892A2. ETA's slimmer, more upscale alternative to something like the aforementioned 2824. Now, the primary differences between ETA's standard 2892 is the reduced beat frequency and getting some alterations as well with the gear train. This is going to drop the beat frequency from 28,800 vibrations per hour to an oscillating beat frequency of 25,200 vibrations per hour, a frequency best known to enthusiasts by Omega's coaxial collection of calibers. In this case, the slower frequency is utilized to preserve the energy from the mainspring, extending the power reserve here to a capable 72 hours. The other beauty of this movement compared to some other offerings from the Swatch Group that commonly utilize 3 Hz or 21,600 vibration per hour movements is this splitting of the difference between 3 to 4 Hz offers the upside of extending the power reserve while still offering a sweep that is smooth, where the differences from 4 Hz are going to be negligible. In terms of standard operation, again, we're looking at 25,200 vibrations per hour, 3.5 Hz. It does feature hacking and hand winding, hacking stopping the second hand when you pull the crown to the farthest position, and has a power reserve of approximately 72 hours. Now to unpack here, looking at the Longines Conquest, I think when most people consider an everyday watch under $1,000, there's a lot to choose from, but most are going to be looking at the offerings from Hamilton and then maybe Tissot. Those are probably the two just standards and verticals in that price range. There are others, but those are the ones that come to mind for many enthusiasts. But what if you wanted to get something for a little bit more money, you wanted to really extend out, and then also maybe getting into that next tier of brands? Where could you look? And whenever people would ask that type of question, I would always point to this watch as being a strong point of consideration. When it comes to the history from a brand like Longines, I don't think it's hard to rival, honestly. Their archive is so rich, and you get the benefits of that from their heritage collection, as well as from an output and prestige standpoint. When you look at a brand like Longines, not to put too much weight in the brand on the dial, there is something to be said about that when you do have a watch from this very well-established brand. But really why I think this one makes a lot of sense for people is just considering what it provides for the price. Now, there are a lot of things north of it as well as south of it that in some areas might give it a run for its money, but when you factor in the really solid bracelet on this one, I think for at least this price range, maybe not the best, but still very good. Case finishing's good. Dial is going to be incredibly versatile. The water resistance rating on this is simply phenomenal. 300 meters for an everyday watch without an external rotating bezel. You're getting the upsides of a dive watch without necessarily leaning into the direction of design. I think that's one of the best things going for this piece. Also, the movement on the inside is going to be a nice middle ground proprietary for Longines, made by ETA. So you're getting the reliability as well as some exclusivity with that movement, and a very capable power reserve at that with a nice clean sweep compared to some of those 3 Hz movements. The lume situation is strange. I don't know why they opted to include lume on some of the dials, is not included on others. So maybe just keep that in mind. But I just see this as one of the best offerings for a Swiss-made everyday watch for around $1,000 in the price range. You of course have the mainstays underneath it. You have some other watches available above it. But as you kind of go up in price until you start getting into, that multiples of the price, I don't think you're really seeing that much of an increase. And I think the Conquest in this contemporary form is a bit underrated or underappreciated considering Longines is most commonly associated with their heritage lineup. So simply put, one of the best everyday watches you're gonna find from Switzerland in the $1,000 range. All right, guys, well, thank you again so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That really does help out the channel. Also, if you like what you saw here from this watch today, definitely check it out on teddybaldassarre.com, as well as the other models from the brand on the site. If you want to stay up to date with the content, be sure to follow along on Instagram as well. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.